At 41. I'm Steve Williams on AM 560, The Answer.
47 O'Hare, 48 Lakefront. Next news at 8:30. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
Check out the pre-Black Friday event this weekend at Shoot Point Blank. Take advantage of early doorbuster savings on firearms, ammo, and more. Plus, all Smith & Wesson firearms will be on sale during this event. Visit your Shoot Point Blank store for details.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. A big takeaway from last night's Democrat-Socialist debate. A lot of people focusing on the row between Kamala Harris and Tulsi Gabbard, but I thought the biggest slight of the night, and Kevin Rooney, a friend of the show, tweeting out in agreement with me, was the slight in the direction of Joe Biden. Kevin Rooney tweeting, "It's incredible how rude these Dem candidates are. Over 2 hours, and not one of them congratulated Joe Biden on becoming a grandfather again."
Yeah, and this stems from the paternity suit out of the state of Arkansas, where this basketball player from Arkansas State then went on to George Washington University, met Biden in D.C. They had an affair while he was dating his dead brother's wife, fathered a son, and she says she doesn't want to bring down Biden's campaign at all. She just wants financial support for this boy.
Congratulations to Joe Biden on becoming a grandfather again, and to Hunter too. Now you know why he needed to get off
embrace
those overseas ventures in Ukraine and China. He's got a big growing family to feed, and that's super. Another important moment from the Democrat-Socialist debate, just to make sure people understand the perspective that's being presented, the policy agenda that perspective drives. Comrade Bernie Sanders, he was there complaining about not getting enough credit for that damn plan that he wrote, the Medicare for All. Also talking about imprisoning fossil fuel company executives.
What we have got to do tonight, and I will do as president, is to tell the fossil fuel industry that their short-term profits are not more important than the future of this planet. And by the way, the fossil fuel industry is probably criminally liable because they have lied and lied and lied when they had the evidence that their carbon products were destroying the planet. And maybe we should think about prosecuting them as well.
Thank you, Senator Sanders. Andrew.
But by the way, he looked awful. I know he had a heart attack, and he is not as strong as he used to be. He's lost a lot of weight, and I just think that he should drop out.
Well, he's not going to. For more commentary on this, we're pleased to be joined by Tim Carney, senior political columnist for the Washington Examiner, author of Alienated America, Why Some Places Thrive While Others Collapse. Tim, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Again, other than the addition to the Biden family, what was your big takeaway from last night's debate?
Just sort of aesthetically, I thought Kamala looked a little desperate, and you sort of started to realize, wait a second, for some of these people like Kamala Harris and Cory Booker, this is just about their last chance. Booker might not qualify for the next debate. Harris is just doing absolutely abysmally in the national polls and the early states. And so when we were looking at her talk, and for some reason I felt, unfortunately, like the TV was more high def last night than it has been. You got to see their faces, whether it's Amy Klobuchar's hair shaking or that sort of thing. But Kamala had a look of almost panic, and for her to go one-on-one with Tulsi, I think maybe she was thinking of getting revenge there. And a lot of people, judging by Twitter, thought she landed some good blows there. But the fact is that if she's taking on the number 9 or 10 candidate in the race, and nobody was really taking on Buttigieg, Biden got a free pass more or less. Warren and Sanders both got free passes. I don't see where any of the second tier is going to find support.
Why do you think it is, though, that the American people haven't embraced Kamala Harris? Because she even said it's not because she's black, it's because she's a woman. She said that 3 weeks ago.
No, I mean,
Yeah.
we had the Democrats nominated a woman. A lot of people don't remember this. The woman who lost to Donald Trump.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You're
2
right.
years
She was
ago.
a woman.
Forgot
both
about that.
parties. So I mean, at least the Democratic electorate is perfectly fine with women, and Warren for a while was a front runner there. I think that she just, there was an immediate interest in her. The reason she did kind of well in the early polls is because she was young. She had sort of an interesting history, and she was a black woman. I think the youth, the race, and the gender all created an interest in her and made everybody give her a look. And then they didn't like what they saw. She really wasn't offering anything unique. She was desperately, always had no idea what she was talking about on policy. She would say something about healthcare and not even realize the implications, and then say the opposite. And that the one thing she does know is locking people up. And so she's running on that. And you would think there would be an appeal to sort of, I'm going to lock up Trump. That's the tone of her campaign. But that's not it's not catching on, in part because I think part of it is a personal unlikability, but also a lack of depth on policy. And that was an interesting thing about last night, is that in previous debates, candidates really were pressed to try to be realistic about their policies. There wasn't as much of that in the debate last night. That was something that irritated a lot of people on the left, to say, hey, why are we being asked how we would pay for this when the Republicans could cut taxes and increase deficits? We shouldn't have to explain why how we're going to pay for our expensive plans.
Yeah, the Kamala thing, and there was clearly a lane for her in the beginning, but it's one of those things where candidate might look good on paper in terms of the political landscape, but then you actually have to perform. And what it turns out, I think it's almost all personality. She comes across as a nasty, unrepentant social climber, and that's sort of a bad combination of qualities.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I know a lot of people who are sort of personally put off by her, and there's not a perception. I mean, there's sort of two things people look for in a primary on either side. One is, do I agree with you? And then two is, do I think you have the best chance of winning in the general? And she doesn't have a strong set of beliefs outside of sort of locking people up, and she does not come across as the most likely to win. And part of it is, I do think that when she lost the fight over the summer with Tulsi Gabbard, that was particularly bad, because the reason to go with Kamala is to think, okay, this woman is sharp, she's smart, she could really take on Trump in a debate. Well, now you don't. When you see her losing in these debates, that takes away a lot of the reason to go for someone like Harris.
I can't see anybody taking on Trump in a debate. I mean, Biden was so flat last night, and something's like his coloring's off. He just didn't look well to me, and also he was, his sentences were incoherent at times. Do you agree?
No, that's right. And he would, he made the mistake of talking about the only black woman ever elected to the Senate when he was 5 feet away from Kamala Harris, who was also a black woman elected to the Senate. And then he said, no, I didn't say only, I said first. But everybody had just heard him say first. And so, it wasn't just saying the wrong word. It was not even remembering what he had said. And then Klobuchar, too, was the other one who, again, I think the tight camera zoom and maybe a cold auditorium or something did not make her look good, because when I would watch those Judiciary Committee hearings and you would see Booker trying to be Spartacus, you would see Kamala just being a total blowhard and making stuff up and being a demagogue and not very good at it. And then you would see Amy Klobuchar be kind of like a grown-up in the room, asking tough questions and being serious. That's what made me think maybe she's the one who could take on Trump, because she's going to be more serious than Kamala, but also she's sharp and tough. But if she looks like she's scared and shaking, and then I don't think she's going to instill the confidence.
Is this going to come down? I mean, I don't know how. I guess that's the question, sort of where you handicap things. It seems to me this is sort of tracking to Biden versus Mayor Pete.
So there's a very good chance that Pete does win Iowa. So we're still 10 weeks out from Iowa, or 11. from the caucuses there. And so that is that's a long time. If you look back at who was first, I think Obama didn't pull into first place in Iowa in the polls until after Thanksgiving. It was right about now. I think and the Republicans in the 2012 cycle went through like 3 Iowa frontrunners between November and when Santorum sort of pulled even with Romney there. So a lot could change, but there's a lot of reason to think. I was just in Iowa, and the only people I found in rural America, the only candidate with any support among the Democrats was Pete Buttigieg. So he was the only one who had visited whole corners of the state. And so there's good reason to think that he wins in Iowa, and then he gets a lot of attention. The problem is if he's taking a lot of his support from Biden. So I do think it's going to be somebody on the left who's going to get the other huge chunk. There's at least a third of that Democratic base, and especially in a place like Iowa where caucusing is done by people who are more involved because they have to give up part of their night and get a babysitter. So I do think Warren or Sanders will do very well pulling in.
Yeah, but
what about New Hampshire?
Going beyond Iowa, though, I'm talking about this long term because Biden has a firewall in South Carolina that it doesn't appear right now is going to be pierced. It's certainly not going to be pierced by Mayor Pete, and Warren seems to have done herself real damage with Medicare for all. Is there enough?
There's that third of the Democratic base that's going to be on the left, and I think that they're not going to just give in and go along with Pete or Biden.
Well, right,
but the left is big, and they're going to go with Warren or Sanders.
Well, right,
it's going to at least be a 3-man race.
Yeah, but that's the whole point. You have Warren and Warren has Sanders to deal with, and you've got the Bernie bros that are loyalists. It seems to. I mean, look, I'm stunned to say this because But Mayor Pete, there's sort of a magical quality to him that shouldn't exist, but it does, just based on the electorate we're talking about. I mean, I don't think he's particularly bright, and I don't think he's a gifted rhetorician. And I think the only reason he's in this race competitive is because he's gay. But this is very much of a sort of a making history. He's the room temperature guy among bubbling septuagenarians and nasty Marxists. And
he's mayor of South Bend because 11,000 people voted for him.
Well, that's the whole point. That's why this is so ridiculous. That's why this is ridiculous. And by the way,
I could see Biden supporters settling for him. I can't see Warren and Sanders supporters settling for him.
Well, right, but
because he's not far enough left.
But I agree that it could be 3 lanes here. But my point is to say that Mayor Pete and Biden and Warren or Sanders, that's where this is tracking to. But that Mayor Pete, the mayor of South Bend, which by the way isn't doing well, is a serious contender to be the Democrat nominee for president.
Hey man, he got 10,000 votes. That's 10,000 more than I ever got. I think. When my dad won mayor of our tiny town, he only got about 4,000 votes, and so my dad, I guess, is half qualified to be the Democratic nominee for president. It is absurd, but you know what? You know who he would be running against? A reality TV star. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think
but now he's
American
4 years
voters have decided that we have to have lots of public service. A reality TV star who succeeded a guy who had just been a state senator from one of those other states out there in the Midwest.
Well, that's my point.
4 years before.
Yeah, that's sort of my point. Although, I mean, at least the reality TV star had like an accomplishment, a record in business. I mean, the point is not necessarily public service or public office, but you have to have a record of doing something in life. And he has a record of being the mayor of South Bend. I mean, his military service, okay, I'll grant you, but in terms of a record of accomplishment in a particular field for a extended period of time, what is it? Mayor of South Bend? South Bend isn't going well.
No, there's nothing. There's no record there. And the other thing, this would point to an electoral problem, is that part of the reason I think people like you and I look at Mayor Pete and say seriously is because he's a lot younger than us, right? I'm only 41, and I'm thinking a guy can't be younger than me and be president. I mean, I can barely handle running the T-ball team I run. How could I be president? And I do think that'll matter a lot to a lot of voters. There's going to be a lot of voters who are old,
older
not
voters,
just white, but old black guys who are going to say, "Wait a second, come on, this guy can't be president."
Yeah, no, I think that's true. I think that's a long way to go. I know it's amazing that we're even here, I guess is my point. Last thing I want to get to this controversy that the Washington Examiner has fomented about the watch that Ambassador Sondland was wearing during the hearings yesterday.
What was it?
Was it in fact a Breguet Marine chronograph, which it's talking about a $50,000 watch.
I have to admit, you might look at me and think that I'm an expert in fine $50,000 watches, but somehow that hobby has evaded my attention through my life. So I'm not going to weigh in on exactly which watches.
I want to see a picture of the watch now. Do you have a picture?
See, here I thought you were an English gentleman because I wanted to discuss the particulars of the Marine chronograph versus the chronometer. But I guess I can't do that with you, Tim.
I'm sorry. No, we'll have to talk about polo and other equestrian sports instead.
All right, we'll do that offline. All right, Tim Carney, senior political columnist for the Washington Examiner, author of the book Alienated America, Why Some Places Thrive While Others Collapse. Tim, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's news, opinion, insight. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
If you're self-employed and purchase your own health insurance, I have some good news. From now until December 15th,